Good afternoon. Hi, it's Rob Rubel, and we're back for our podcast, microcast, whatever we're calling. We're still working on a total name for it, but very excited tonight to have Eva Cowen with us. She lives in the DC area and is a sibling of Uncle Roger, an adult who's 63 years old, if I got that right, who has autism. Eva has worked in the field through several organizations or in several different roles, both as a camp counselor in Rockville and as an inclusion director as well. And so she's well versed in the area of working with people who've got developmental disabilities, both in her personal life and her professional life. Eva's also the mom of 3 children, and as she said in her note back to me, about to be 4. So congratulations on your upcoming wedding. And I'm really excited to have you today and to kind of just jump in. Again, what we're trying to do is make this fast, fun, and to learn something from other parents and family members as we're going along, and not to have this huge, long commitment. So we're just going to jump right in with the questions. And again, I appreciate having you here today. So the first question I have for you today is, what did you learn about yourself from having a family member with autism in your life?
I learned first and foremost about what it means to be an advocate. And it was taught to me pretty directly by my mom. My brother is 6 years older than I am, and so I never knew a life without him. And so, grew up knowing him and understanding his needs and who he was. And the two of us used to walk about half a mile away to the pharmacy with our allowance to buy candy and then walk back home. And I must have been about 12, maybe a little bit younger, and he was a teenager. And in the pharmacy, he started jumping up and down. He was very excited. And the man who owned the pharmacy, and it was a small town, if you want to call it that, the man who owned the pharmacy told us we had to leave because Roger was making him nervous with his behavior. And by the time I got home, I guess he had called my mom and said that I was very rude to him. And my mom said, I understand why you're mad. I understand why you're upset. But if you're rude to people, they're only going to think you're a brat. They're not going to learn anything about him and why he does what he does. So you should tell them he's jumping up and down because he's excited. He's not going to hurt anybody, and I'm here with him. So my parents taught me very early on that he was going to be a part of society and that we really had to teach society how to understand him.
I love that. Your parents were so forward thinking. Yes. For the time when you think back. Yes. We're still talking about inclusion and appropriate inclusion in today's world. And I feel like my daughter, who's 19, was the beneficiary in many ways of the work that you and your family were doing back when he was younger. So it's great. It's just it seems like such an obvious thing. Treat people in a kind and positive way. And I know sometimes it's hard to look past some behavior that might look a little bit different, but so often the question of just, what can we do to help rather than let's throw these kids out of the building. But anyway, so thank you for sharing. That's a great story. Next question. What was one win your family member had or Uncle Roger had? I don't know why I'm calling him Uncle Roger, but he just already seems like an uncle.
He is Uncle Roger.
Brother Roger to you. That's right. What was one win your family member with a disability had that stands out, something that was a win for you as a sibling maybe, or just something that you had hoped that had happened for him and then came to be?
Well, I think because of the way that my parents approached life with him, this was in the early 60s when he was diagnosed, and they were told by the doctor, you really should just send him away. He's just going to make your family life difficult. My mom was having none of that. Mm-hmm. And so they said, it's not, 2 things need to happen. Roger needs to learn how to live in the world, and the world needs to understand the way he lives in the world. And mm-hmm. So, through lots of dedication and patience and trips to restaurants that didn't always work out, but they kept trying. And he learned, he did learn. And I think one of the greatest wins is the neighborhood that I grew up in was just a wonderful neighborhood where our kids all played outside. The neighborhood pool was sort of the hub, and everyone in the neighborhood understood him and embraced him. And they all grew up with him, understood his differences, but I think they all, when I see them as adults now, some of the kids I grew up with, they still remember the experience of learning about Roger and learning that he was a kid like the rest of us.
Mhm.
And I think that was a win. And then I think the second win is that my parents always wanted him to have his own life in some way for two reasons. One, so he could have a life that was his, and the other, so that when they were gone, we weren't physically caring for him. And so he has lived in a group home under the umbrella of Macomb, which used to be the Jewish Foundation for Group Homes, for over 30 years. And this is his home. He's lived with mostly the same guys for the past 30 years. There's been just a tiny bit of turnover. And they're like his brothers, his chosen family. And he comes to my house, loves to come over, have meals, but loves to go back home. And it's a win to me when I see him and I drop him off and he runs up to the front door, knowing that he really does. He has his own place, his own home, his own life.
Oh, no, it's great. Again, as a parent of a 19-year-old, trying to figure out what that independence looks like, and that sense of having your own community that we are all trying to build on our own. Just so great to hear that he's had that for such a long period of time. Yeah, we're looking at a college program for my daughter. And initially I was thinking, maybe she'd go there, take some classes, but live at home. We just met with the group and they said, really, the people who get best results just jump right in like every other kid going to college and live on campus. And yes, there's more support, but over time, figuring out those routines, making those friendships. I love to hear that story. And I love the restaurant piece. We don't eat out that much, but I just love doing it. And I know I have some friends and who have children with autism or clients that do as well. And sometimes it's just a little bit more difficult because there's a little bit more movement around with some of those people. And but just having everybody understand, again, like I said, like your first story, it's another person in the community, and let's treat everybody with respect. So
well, and I think that one of the things we talk about in the field I'm in is about behavior, and behavior is always a message. So for people who aren't as capable verbally of expressing what's going on, sometimes they have no choice but to express it through behavior. And I think what my parents did before they realized they were doing it was just to try to teach people around them, listen to what he's saying by the way he's behaving. So.
That is fantastic. That should be written like on top of something. Behavior is always a message before we walk into somebody's house. Another question, was there one person, book, class, or something else that helped you understand your role as a sibling? And again, it sounds like it could be your parents, but that might be the right answer, or maybe there's something else.
I think it was my parents. A very interesting experience I had, though, didn't come until college. There was a group called, I cringe to say it, but it was called Siblings of Handicapped People. And now you wouldn't say that, but it was siblings of people with disabilities. And I joined this group, and I did not have negative feelings about Roger. I understood he took more of my parents' time and attention, but understood why he needed it and never felt neglected by them either. And I joined this group and I was excited about it, and went to the first meeting and realized there were a lot of very angry siblings who felt neglected and who felt they didn't get what they need. And I felt really out of place, didn't quite know what to do with myself, because I didn't want to sit in this meeting and kind of invalidate other people's experiences. It was real. So I didn't stick with the group, but that was the first time I ever met someone who had a sibling with a disability who felt hurt or neglected because of it.
And yes, and so for them, a very important group, and then for you, an eye-opener as to different ways it could be in different families. So giving you great experience as you work with other families. It's amazing. Okay, and here's the surprise question, just, it's a pretty easy one. What was the best thing that happened for you and your brother together over the last year? And it can just be something great for you, or you guys combined.
Oh, over the last year. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I would usually say last week, but I don't know how often do you see your brother, so we'll see.
Well, it's really interesting because COVID was really hard on him. He's very routine oriented, as can be typical with some people with autism. And over COVID, of course, everything was disrupted. And so he, finally got back into the swing of things, of going to his job, but he was still confused by things. And so he's shown more anger and frustration than he has for years and years and years before that, when he just felt very settled and things were predictable. And then COVID messed that up for all of us. None of us knew what was coming next. And so he started to show his anger more, but he has developed this habit when he gets angry, which is usually when he wants something or he's not sure what's happening next, or, we're in an unfamiliar place, where he'll seek out either a napkin, a Kleenex, or something soft, and he'll slam it on the ground, and he'll pick it up and he'll slam it on the ground again.
I don't mean to laugh, but I like that he chooses something soft, right?
It's genius. And he's done this when there have been plenty of other things to throw. There's been a coffee table with glass things. There's been plenty of things he could throw. And I was with him once when someone tried to stop him. And I said, no. If we all had this coping mechanism when we're angry, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. This is him expressing his frustration without hurting anyone or anything. And we're just able to say to him, I can see that you're upset. I can see that you're frustrated. I'm going to try and figure it out. He has some verbal skills, but not conversational. So it's too hard for him to express what he's mad about. But this, to me, that's such a win that he's learned, okay, I'm mad. I want to show it, but I don't want to do any damage.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it goes back to that behavior is always a message. In his case, he chose a behavior that really doesn't hurt anybody or anything, and gives him a voice once you recognize what he's trying to do with that. So
right.
Oh, that's great. I so appreciate your time. I know that just all these little tidbits that we're putting out there are going to be helpful to other people. These messages that we're hearing of how to treat people with respect and inclusion and try to understand people where they are. It's a message we just can't be heard enough in today's world, it seems like, and such positive outcomes when we handle it the right way. Yeah. So again, I greatly appreciate your time. I hope that we get a chance to meet in person at some point. And if not, it's been great getting to know you here. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me.